a man is facing the rest of his life in prison, multiple felonies, $250 million in fake American cash traced back to his door. Prosecutors are talking about decades behind bars. 6 weeks later, he walks out, free, reportedly a small fine, in Canadian dollars. And the counterfeit money he made? Some of it is quite possibly still in wallets today. His name is Frank Bourassa. By his own account, he printed around $250 million in near-perfect $20 bills, and then pulled off something even harder than the forgery itself. He got away with it. This is how. Frank Bourassa was not a master criminal in any obvious way. A guy from Trois-Rivières, Quebec. He'd run a brake pad business, dabbled on the wrong side of the law, and then asked himself a dangerous question. Why work for money when you could simply make it? Most people who ask that end up in prison fast because they do the stupid thing. They buy a decent printer, run off some bills, and spend them at the corner store. Bourassa did the opposite. He treated it like a manufacturing problem. And he started, as he tells it, with 18 months of nothing but research. He picked his target coldly, the US $20 bill. Not the 100, too scrutinized. The 20, everywhere, trusted, handled without a second glance, and at the time carrying older security features than the bigger notes. The perfect hide-in plain sight denomination. And he studied the enemy's own playbook. By his account, he spent those months poring over public information about currency security, including material published by the very agencies whose job is to stop people like him. Everything he needed to begin was hiding in plain sight. Here's the wall almost every counterfeiter hits, and it's the same wall from every episode of this series. The paper. Real US currency isn't printed on paper at all, not really. It's a specific cotton and linen blend, with tiny red and blue fibers baked in, and a feel your fingers recognize before your brain does. Ordinary mills won't make it. It's controlled. That single material is the moat that stops 1,000 would-be forgers. So Bourassa did something audacious. He went to the legitimate industry and tricked it into helping. Under a false business story, and by his account, a cover about secure documents or bond certificates, he approached specialty paper mills in Europe. Most turned him down. Reportedly, one eventually agreed to produce a custom cotton linen stock, enough, he claimed, to back $250 million in bills. Then the watermark and the fine details. By widely reported accounts, he commissioned a specialist firm in Germany to make a custom engraved drum bearing a certain American president's face, no questions asked. As Bourassa later put it, to a craftsman in Europe, it's just some man's face. Who's going to recognize Andrew Jackson? Piece by piece, using real suppliers who never knew what they were building, he assembled the one thing that defeats almost everyone: authentic feeling money paper. With the paper solved, the rest was industrial. Reportedly, a professional offset press, proper plates, the correct inks. He didn't run a few bills, he ran a factory. Over several years, Bourassa produced what investigators would later call some of the most sophisticated counterfeit currency they had ever seen, an estimated $250 million in 20s. Notes good enough that they didn't just look right, they felt right, even to people who handle cash for a living. Some slipped into circulation and were never caught. But printing the money was never the real problem, as it never is. The problem is what every forger in history has run into. You can't eat a fake 20. You have to move it. And moving $250 million in illegal cash means dealing with people you cannot control. Bourassa was careful. He refused to pass the bills himself. He wanted them sold in bulk, far away, overseas, keeping distance between himself and the risk. But every sale meant a new person who knew what he'd done. And in a network that big, sooner or later, one of those people is talking to the police. The network was his undoing. An undercover operation closed in, and in 2012, the trail led to Frank Bourassa. He was arrested and charged. On paper, he was looking at a sentence that could run to decades, by some accounts up to 60 years. The United States wanted him extradited. This is where almost every story like this ends, with a very long prison term. Bourassa's didn't, because he still held one enormous card. When police caught him, roughly $200 million of his counterfeit 20s had never entered circulation. It was still sitting, hidden in his control. To investigators, that was a nightmare waiting to happen, a flood of undetectable fakes that could hit the economy at any time. To Bourassa, it was leverage, so he made an offer. Let me walk, and I'll hand you every last bill, and, astonishingly, they took it. He led authorities to the hidden stockpile. Reportedly around 200 million in fake notes was recovered and destroyed, never having reached a single wallet. In exchange, the man who printed $250 million served, by widely reported accounts, about 6 weeks in jail and paid a fine of roughly 1,350 Canadian dollars, a fine for $250 million in fake money. The math is almost offensive, and that's exactly why the story is unforgettable. So how does someone print $250 million and walk away with a fine? The answer says everything about how modern money actually works. The authorities' deepest fear was never punishing Bourassa. It was the 200 million in perfect fakes they couldn't find. Uncirculated counterfeit money is a loaded gun pointed at public trust. Getting it out of the world was worth more to them than getting him into a cell. He understood the one thing his pursuers cared about most, and he sold it back to them. And there's a final irony that ties this whole series together. The reason his fakes were so good was the paper, the same moat guarded by the legitimate companies from our very first episode. He beat the system by borrowing the system's own suppliers. And today, Frank Bourassa reportedly works the other side, advising on anti-counterfeiting, helping the people who once hunted him. The poacher became the gamekeeper. Every episode of this series has circled one truth. Money is only worth what we trust it to be. Counterfeiters, whether a Nazi war machine or a mechanic from Quebec, are simply people who found the cracks in that trust. Next time on Hard Currency, we go back to where we began, the giants. The most powerful of all the companies that print the world's money, a German firm you've still probably never heard of, that quietly touches the cash of half the planet. Subscribe. We're going inside the empire.